I've worked at my unit for 15 years completely clean. But my wife reported me under her real name for taking a 2 million bribe. The disciplinary committee investigated me for 3 months. They couldn't find a single cent out of place. After I was cleared, my boss shook my hand and apologized. I didn't say a word. I just turned around and went home. Looking at my daughter's chubby pink face, I suddenly remembered my wife's coldness over the years. And that cousin of hers who constantly dropped by our house. The very next day, I took my daughter to the hospital. The moment the paternity test results came out, my hands were shaking. Team leader Wang from the disciplinary committee held my hand. His hand was dry and warm. Section Chief Zhao, you've been wronged. I looked at him and said nothing. On the table lay a document, black text on an official red letterhead. Investigation conclusion. The report regarding Zhao Yi accepting a 2 million bribe is unfounded. 3 months, 92 days. Every single day I spent in a room. That was less than 10 square meters. 3 meals a day were brought to me. Twice a day, someone would come to interrogate me. They asked me about the source of every single deposit, the destination of every single expense. I explained it over and over again. I told them I didn't take the money. They didn't believe me, or maybe they did. Today, it was finally over. Team leader Wang personally escorted me out of the office building. About your workplace, I've already spoken with Bureau Chief Zhang. He said he'll hold a small meeting for you, to restore your reputation. I nodded. Go home and get a good rest. It hasn't been easy for your wife either. I stopped in my tracks and looked at him. A trace of awkwardness flashed across his face. Oh, yes, my wife, Zhou Rui. She righteously chose justice over family. She reported me using her real name. She claimed that in the hidden compartment of my nightstand, there was a certificate of deposit for 2 million. The disciplinary committee went over. Pried open the compartment and it was totally empty. There was absolutely nothing. Zhou Rui insisted she had seen it with her own eyes. When the investigators questioned me, I looked at them and firmly stated, I did not. Now, my name is cleared. Team leader Wang patted my shoulder and walked away. I stood in the sunlight, finding it a bit glaring. The phone in my pocket vibrated. It was Bureau Chief Zhang. Zhao Yi, where are you? Let me host a welcome back dinner for you tonight. No need, Chief Zhang. I just want to go home. The other end of the line went silent for a moment. Alright then, your wife is definitely looking forward to seeing you. Don't worry, I'll get everything at work sorted out for you. I hung up the phone and headed home. The workplace where I hadn't made a single mistake in 15 years, because of this incident. I had become everybody's gossip. And the home I had lived in for 12 years. Because of this incident, I could never really go back to it either. I hailed a cab and gave the address. The car started moving and the shadows of the trees outside the window blurred backward. My mind was completely blank until the car finally stopped downstairs. I paid the fare, got out, and walked into the building's hallway. I took out my keys and inserted them into the lock. The door opened. Mommy, higher. I changed my shoes and walked in. Zhou Rui was holding up a toy airplane. Teasing our daughter, Zhao Anan. Anan was sitting on the sofa, kicking her little legs and giggling. When she saw me, she froze. Daddy, her voice was incredibly small, with a hint of timidity. 3 months apart, and she feels like a stranger to me. Zhou Rui put the model down and stood up. You're back. I looked at her. She had lost some weight, looking as if she was the one who had suffered some terrible injustice. I just gave a low hum. I walked over to the sofa and sat down. Anan poked her little head out from behind her mother. She peeked at me secretly. That chubby little face was so adorable. I used to love pinching her cheeks. But now, looking at that face, my heart just felt completely cold. Have some water. She handed the glass to me, but I didn't take it. When did you find out I was coming back? Team leader Wang called me this morning. Oh. The living room was dead silent. The TV was on, but muted. A fruit platter sat on the table. The grapes in it looked perfectly fresh. I suddenly remembered something. The day I was taken away was a Wednesday. That afternoon, my coworker, Sun Peng, whom we call cousin, said he was coming over for dinner. He was my senior in college and later we ended up working in the same department. His parents and mine were old friends, and we were quite close. So Zhou Rui always just called him cousin. He wasn't married, and he loved coming over to crash our dinners. After I was taken away, did he come over? Has Sun Peng been here recently? Zhou Rui's body stiffened for a second. It was subtle, but I caught it. And no, he hasn't. With what happened to you, how could he possibly feel right coming over? Her eyes darted away guiltily. I didn't say a word. I just picked up the remote from the table and turned off the TV. I stood up. I'm exhausted. I'm going to lie down for a bit. I walked toward the bedroom. Dinner is ready. Don't you want to eat something? I'm not hungry. I pushed open the bedroom door. The bed was perfectly made. Exactly how it looked before I left. On the nightstand, my reference books had been replaced by a few fashion magazines. I pulled open the drawer of the nightstand. My watch and wallet were inside. But the hidden compartment had been pried open, leaving behind an ugly, broken gap. I reached inside and felt around. Empty. Jo Rui was standing at the doorway. She looked completely panicked. Zhao Yi, please, listen to me. I wasn't in my right mind that day. I turned around and stared at her. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I was under so much pressure. I was terrified. Someone called me and said you took bribes. They said it was only a matter of time before you got caught. And told me that if I turned you in myself, it would count as a lighter sentence for you. The ridiculous lie she was spinning didn't match a single one of the 100 scenarios I had imagined while being interrogated. Her excuses were pathetic. I just stood there watching her cry, feeling absolutely nothing. 15 years of marriage. I thought I knew her inside and out. But now, I realize I never knew her at all. I looked at her, then my gaze drifted past her, to our daughter, Anan, who was peeking in from the living room. Anan is 5 years old now. She looks just like Jo Rui. Especially those eyes. People always used to say that Anan was the perfect blend of the two of us. She's got her mom's eyes and her dad's nose. I stared at Anan's little nose, so small and perky. Does it look, even a little bit like mine? A crazy thought crept into my mind, and once it was there, I couldn't push it back down. It was like acid, burning away every last drop of warmth I had left in my heart. I walked over to Jo Rui. She was still crying. Stop crying, I said, my voice dead calm. She just stared at me, stunned. Tomorrow, we're taking Anan to the hospital. The hospital? Is she sick? She looked so nervous. No, she's not sick, I said, staring right into her eyes. We're just going in for a checkup. The next morning, I woke up at 6. Jo Rui was still asleep beside me. Her eyebrows were deeply furrowed, like she was having a bad dream. I watched her for a moment, then got out of bed to wash up. The man in the mirror was so gaunt he was barely recognizable. His eyes looked like a stranger's. I shaved my face and changed my clothes. At 7 o'clock, I knocked on Anan's door. Anan, time to wake up. There was no sound inside. I just pushed the door open and walked in. She was bundled up in her Winnie the Pooh blanket, with only the top of her little head poking out. I gently woke her up. She rubbed her sleepy eyes. And when she saw it was me, she looked a little scared. Daddy? Get up, sweetie. Daddy's taking you out. Where are we going? To a place where they're going to draw some blood. Anan's face instantly went pale. No, I don't want to. I'm scared it'll hurt. She started rolling around on the bed, throwing a tantrum. All the noise woke Jo Rui up. She burst into the room. Zhao Yi, what the hell are you doing? Are you crazy? It's so early. She pulled Anan into her arms and glared at me. You know she's terrified of needles. What kind of checkup has to be done today? I watched her shield our daughter, acting like a furious mother hen. It has to be today. We are going. We just stood there, locked in a standoff. Anan sat right between us, looking back and forth from me to her mother. Then she burst into tears. I don't want to go to the hospital. I don't want a needle. Jo Rui held her tight, trying to comfort her while shooting absolute daggers at me. What kind of checkup are you really doing? Just a routine physical. I've been away for so long. I just want to make sure my daughter is healthy. Is that a crime? It was a foolproof excuse. Jo Rui bit her lip, completely unable to argue. I walked over and pulled Anan out of her arms. That just made her cry even harder. Either I take her myself, or all three of us go together. You pick. She stared me down with pure venom. After a few agonizing seconds, she finally gave up. Fine, I'll go change. On the way to the hospital, the tension in the car was suffocating. I drove while Jo Rui and Anan sat in the back. Anan was still quietly sobbing. Jo Rui tried to comfort her the whole ride, telling her little stories, and promising to buy her the biggest ice cream once the test was over. I watched them in the rearview mirror. It was such a picture-perfect moment. A loving mother, and a sweet little girl. Honestly, if that thought hadn't crept into my head yesterday, I probably would have caved. I would have felt guilty for treating them like this right after coming back. But now, my heart was just a frozen wasteland. We arrived at the hospital. I registered straight away and went to the paternity testing center. Jo Rui's face went pale the moment she saw the words for the forensic testing center. Zhao Yi, what are you? Her voice trembled. I ignored her, dragging Anan inside. I don't want to go in. It's full of bad people in there. Jo Rui chased after us and tightly grabbed my arm. Zhao Yi, what is the meaning of this? You're doubting Anan? Her voice wasn't loud, but it was incredibly piercing. People in the hallway started looking over. I shook off her hand. Got something to hide? I asked her coldly. Her face turned completely white. You bastard, how could you even think that? Anan is your daughter. Your own flesh and blood. Just because I reported you, you're getting back at me like this? Insulting me and our child like this. I just stood there, watching her put on a show. Every single expression on her face, every tear she shed, was just so perfectly timed. If this had been the past, I would have surrendered right away. But now, I only felt disgusted. We'll know the truth once we test it, won't we? I grabbed Anan, done wasting my breath on her. Just then, a nurse walked over. "Excuse me, are you here for a paternity test?" "Yes, we are. We need to draw blood from both the adult and the child." The moment Anan heard about drawing blood, she struggled even harder. Joe Rui rushed forward, trying to snatch the child away. I used my strength to hold Anan in place. "Take mine first." The needle pierced my arm, and the blood flowed right into the collection tube. I didn't feel any pain at all. Then, it was Anan's turn. She was pinned down by 2 nurses, crying her little heart out. "Daddy, I hate you. Mommy, save me." Joe Rui was crying and cursing at me from the side. "Zhao Yi, you're an absolute monster. You are going to regret this." I stared blankly at the tube of blood drawn from Anan's tiny arm. My heart just felt completely empty. After the blood draw and finishing up the paperwork, they told us the results would be out in 7 working days, and we could pick them up in person. Or have them mailed. "I'll come pick them up myself," I said. As we walked out of the testing center, Joe Rui held a completely exhausted, tearful Anan. She glared at me like I was her worst enemy. "Zhao Yi, we are so completely done. We'll talk when the results are out." I walked ahead toward the parking lot. She followed quietly behind me. Once we got home, she put him into bed, then immediately stormed into the study. I was sitting at the computer, looking up lawyers' information. "You owe me an explanation," she screamed at me, slamming the door shut. "Why would you do this? Who's been gossiping behind my back? Was it Sun Peng?" I couldn't believe she brought up Sun Peng first. It caught me a bit off guard. I looked up at her. "You think it was her? If it wasn't her, then who else? Who else even comes to our house besides her? She definitely told you something." It was like she was grasping at straws. "Zhao Yi, you cannot believe her. She's just a snake. She's had it in for me for a long time." I looked at her, suddenly finding the whole thing ridiculous. I was locked up in there for 92 days, and not once did my wife think about what I was going through. My cousin didn't even make a single call to check on me, and now she's trying to shift the blame onto him. "What did he tell me?" I asked, playing along with her. She froze. He definitely badmouthed me. "Said that I'm having an affair with another man?" she asked tentatively. I didn't say a word. Her face just grew paler and paler. "Zhao Yi, you can't think of me like that. We've been married for 15 years. You know what kind of person I am, don't you?" "I used to think I did," I said as I shut down my computer. "Until the results come out. We're sleeping in separate rooms." I stood up and walked out of the study. "You take the master bedroom. I'll sleep in the guest room." She stood frozen in place, trembling all over. What if the results prove that Anan is your daughter?" "Zhao Yi, how are you going to fix this then?" I stopped in my tracks. "If she is, I'll get on my knees and apologize to you." I opened the guest room door and walked in. As the door clicked shut, I heard her let out a desperate, agonizing wail outside. Those 7 days of waiting felt like a century. Joe Rui and I lived under the same roof, but we were like total strangers. We didn't speak to each other. Our meals were made by the hourly maid, who left right after cooking. Joe Rui and I staggered our eating times to avoid each other. Anan seemed to sense something was wrong, too. She stopped throwing tantrums, spending most of her time alone in her room. Sometimes, when I walked past her door, I could hear her talking to her rag doll. "Mommy and Daddy are ignoring me now." It felt like a needle pierced right through my heart. But I didn't stop walking. For those 7 days, I spent most of my time in the guest room. I went through every single photo album from the past 12 years. I looked at them one by one, watching Anan grow from a swaddled little baby into a beautiful little girl. I dug out my own childhood photos to compare. Not a single feature matched. Then, I pulled out Joe Rui's photos. Anan's eyes, eyebrows, mouth, and face shape were practically a carbon copy of hers. I also pulled out photos of Sun Peng. He was my senior in college, so we had a lot of group photos together. I placed Anan's photo right next to Sun Peng's. That same slightly upturned nose. That exact same curve of the lips when they smiled. Identical. My heart sank deeper and deeper. I started recalling every single time Sun Peng came over to our house. He always visited on Friday nights, bringing fruits or toys, claiming they were for Anan. Whenever he came, Joe Rui would be thrilled, personally cooking a whole table of his favorite dishes. When the 3 of us were at the dinner table, they always had endless things to talk about. From funny college memories to office gossip. I would occasionally chime in, and they'd just humor me for a second before going right back to their own conversation. I used to think I was just overthinking it. I thought, since they were cousins, it was completely normal for them to be close. I was busy with work, under a lot of stress, and didn't talk much. I figured it was nice that Sun Peng could keep Joe Rui company and relieve her boredom. I really am an absolute fool. I remember 5 years ago, on the day little Anan was born. I was pacing outside the delivery room, worried sick. Sun Peng was there, too. He said he just happened to be passing by the hospital and heard that Joe Rui had gone into labor. So he came by to check on us. When the nurse finally brought the baby out, I was the first one to rush over, and Sun Peng was right on my heels. He stared down at the swaddled baby, and his eyes lit up even brighter than mine, her actual biological father. "Congratulations, man, your daughter is absolutely gorgeous." When he said that, his eyes were completely glued to Anon. He didn't even glance at me. I also remember this one time. I came home early from work. I opened the door and saw Sun Peng and Zhou Rui on the couch. They were sitting way too close. Zhou Rui was crying, and Sun Peng had his arm wrapped tightly around her shoulder, comforting her. The second they saw me, they jumped apart like they had been electrocuted. She was just watching a Korean drama, it was super touching. Yeah, you know how women just love to cry over these things. And I believed it. I, like an absolute idiot, believed them time and time again. And that anonymous report about the 2 million. It all makes sense now. Only those two could come up with such a twisted, malicious setup. They figured once I got locked up in prison, I'd never see the light of day again. My house, my savings, my social standing, it would all just naturally fall right into their laps. They wouldn't even need to bother with a divorce. The poor, helpless wife of a criminal, raising a child all by herself. Leaning on her dear cousin for survival. What a beautiful, touching story. I angrily gathered up all the photos, grabbed my phone, and called a friend of mine who works as a private investigator. "I need you to look into someone for me." "Who is it?" "Sun Peng, and my wife, Zhou Rui." "What exactly are we looking for?" "Their hotel records, every single stay from 5 years ago, all the way up to now. Bank transfers, financial history. I want to know absolutely everything." "Yi, are you completely sure about this?" "I'm sure." "Alright, I'll get back to you with the info in 3 days." I hung up the phone. I felt a freezing chill take over my entire body. Finally, the 7th day arrived. It was the day to pick up the DNA report. I called in and took the day off from work. Just as I was heading out the door, Zhou Rui blocked the entryway. She was fully dressed to go out. "I'm going with you." "No need. I have to go. I want to see the results with my own 2 eyes." She was incredibly agitated. She looked so absolutely certain that the results would go exactly the way she wanted. Maybe she thought that if she acted self-righteous and confident enough, she could somehow alter reality. I didn't bother arguing with her again. We didn't say a single word the entire ride. When we finally arrived at the testing center, I gave them my name. The staff member handed me a thick, brown paper envelope. It looked thin, but it felt incredibly heavy. So heavy that my hands could barely hold it steady. Zhou Rui lunged forward to snatch it, but I dodged out of the way. I gripped that envelope tightly. My fingertips felt completely frozen. My hands were trembling violently. I couldn't control it. Zhou Rui noticed it too. "Are you scared now?" "Zhao Yi, it's still not too late for you to back out of this. Come home, apologize to me and our daughter right now, and we can just pretend this whole thing never happened." I completely ignored her. With my hands still shaking, I ripped the envelope open. There was a single piece of paper inside. I slowly pulled it out. My eyes fell straight down to the bottom, to the final conclusion. That line of black text pierced my eyes like a red-hot knife. Based on the DNA results, Zhao Yi is ruled out as the biological father of Zhao Anan. Ruled out, ruled out, ruled out. My brain let out a loud ringing sound. Everything went completely blank. The world just fell silent. I couldn't hear what Zhou Rui was saying, and I couldn't even feel my own heartbeat. I stood there staring at that piece of paper, like a puppet with its soul completely sucked out. I don't know how much time passed before Zhou Rui's voice finally pierced my ears. She sounded like she was screaming, "Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. The report is fake. You guys forged this report." She rushed over to the counter, slamming her hands on the desk, screaming her lungs out at the staff. I slowly folded up the report, slipped it back into the envelope, and tucked it into my inner pocket. Pressed right against my chest. It used to be warm in there, but now, that piece of paper made it feel as freezing as a block of iron. I turned around. Zhou Rui was still making a massive scene. She looked like an absolute madwoman. I walked over, and grabbed her arm. "Zhao Yi, this is fake. You have to believe me. They definitely made a mistake somewhere. Go home." I only said 2 words. My voice was so calm. So dead calm it didn't even sound like my own. I dragged her outside. She wasn't as strong as me. I dragged her all the way out of the hospital, and shoved her into the car. I started the engine and hit the road. She was sitting in the passenger seat, still crying, still saying it was impossible. "Zhao Yi, please believe me. You are the only man I've ever been with. And then is your daughter. The hospital definitely messed up." "Shut up," I cut her off. She completely froze. Maybe my tone actually terrified her. The car finally went dead quiet. I kept driving, but I didn't head home. Instead, I took a hard turn at an intersection, heading somewhere else entirely. "This isn't the way home. Where are you taking me?" I didn't answer her. Half an hour later, I pulled the car up in front of an apartment building. I didn't recognize this place, but I knew exactly who lived here. My friend had sent me a file with this exact address. The place Sun Peng rented on the side. Jo Rui recognized it too. All the color drained from her face instantly. Jo Rui followed my gaze, and saw that familiar apartment building. The blood rushed out of her face in a split second. I don't know this place. Zhao Yi, what are you bringing me here for? I want to go home. She started getting completely hysterical, reaching out to pull the door handle, but the car doors were locked dead. I completely ignored her screaming. My voice was still dead calm. Building 15, Unit 2, Room 103. Sun Peng's place, right? With every single syllable I dropped, her body jerked with a shiver. By the time I read out the full room number, it was like all her strength had been violently sucked out. Slumping back into the seat, her lips trembling uncontrollably, unable to force out a single word. How did you know? If I want to know something, I'll find a way. He rented this place 2 months ago, and you paid the rent. The money came straight from the allowance card your mother gave you. 6,000 a month, 1 month deposit, 3 months paid up front. Your first payment was 36,000. All of this is from my private investigator friend. Just a fraction of the files he sent me. Every single transaction is crystal clear. Nothing but pure terror remained in Jo Rui's eyes. She stared at me, like she was looking at a monster. You investigated me? When you filed that report against me under your real name, you should have known this day would come. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out to check. It was from my friend, an encrypted zip file. The subject line read, everything you asked for. I answered the call. Yi, I sent you the files. It's more than enough to completely ruin those two. Hotel records, bank transfers, and screenshots of their WeChat conversations. I had a guy recover them. They even talk about how they were gonna frame you. Just, take a look for yourself. Thanks, man. I hung up the phone and turned the screen toward Jo Rui. Showing her the file name. She couldn't make out the actual contents, but she definitely understood that title. Her last mental defenses completely shattered. Zhao Yi, I was wrong. I was so wrong. Please, just forgive me this one time. Let's just go home, okay? We can't get a divorce. Please, for Annan's sake. She can't lose her father. I slowly pulled the DNA test report out of my pocket, unfolded it, and shoved it right in front of her face. She looked down at the words, excludes Zhao Yi as the biological father of Zhao Annan. Her hysterical crying stopped dead in its tracks. It was like someone had suddenly choked her by the throat. The car went dead silent. Right at that moment, a black Audi A6 pulled into the parking lot. It parked just a short distance away, and the car door swung open. Sun Peng stepped out of the driver's seat. He was dressed completely in casual clothes, carrying a few supermarket bags stuffed full of fresh vegetables and meat. He was even humming a little tune. He locked his car, glanced up at a specific window on Building 15, and flashed this sickeningly warm, I'm home kind of smile. He was looking right at apartment 1103. Jo Rui saw him, too. She just stared at that man, stared at the grocery bags in his hands, stared at that thoroughly satisfied smile on his face. Finally, she just buried her face in her knees, and let out this utterly suppressed, animal-like whimper. I started the engine and drove us home. Jo Rui didn't say a single word the entire ride back. She just stayed curled up in the passenger seat, looking exactly like a soulless, broken rag doll. When we got home, I parked the car. She didn't even move to get out of the car at first. Eventually, she followed me into the lobby, stepped into the elevator, and I finally unlocked our front door. Hearing the noise, Annan came running out of her room. Mommy. She threw herself toward Jo Rui, but Jo Rui's entire body went stiff. She practically flinched away, and Annan grasped at nothing. The little girl just froze right there, her big round eyes completely filled with confusion and hurt. She looked up at Jo Rui, and then she looked over at me. Then, very carefully, she backed into her own room, and quietly shut the door. I changed my shoes, walked over to the living room sofa, and sat down. Take a seat. Jo Rui sat down in the armchair across from me like a puppet on a string. I didn't go to the study to grab my laptop. Instead, I turned on the smart TV in the living room. I cast my phone screen onto the massive television display. The first slide was the DNA paternity test, right there in black and white. The conclusion is crystal clear. Let's talk about this first. Annan is not my daughter. So, after the divorce, you get full custody of her. I will not be paying a single dime in child support. And there's absolutely no need for any visitation rights, either. Jo Rui's body swayed slightly. She didn't say a word. I pressed the button for the next slide. A spreadsheet popped up on the screen. It was an inventory of assets I had put together. Number 2, assets. This house is 180 square meters. I bought it in full before we got married. The deed only has my name on it. It belongs entirely to my premarital assets. You get nothing from it. The family car is worth 500,000, and it's registered under my name. I bought it using my savings from before our marriage. So, it's also a premarital asset. You get nothing from that, either. As for our bank accounts, we each keep what's under our own names. I looked into your accounts. Aside from the money your parents gave you, there's also the $320,000 that Sun Pong has been wiring you piece by piece since the year before last. You used your mom's bank card as a middleman, thinking I wouldn't track it down. This money is hard proof of your affair with him. I'll be submitting it all to the court. With every word I said, Joe Rui's face turned a shade paler. I kept clicking to the next slide. Photos started flashing across the screen, one after another. They were pictures of her and Sun Pong hugging and kissing at various hotel entrances, or out in the neighborhood parking lot. The times and locations were clearly watermarked. Number 3, grounds for divorce. Infidelity during the marriage and maintaining a long-term illicit relationship with someone else. The evidence for this is absolutely solid. But the most important point here, Joe Rui, is that you conspired with Sun Pong to maliciously frame me, trying to throw me in prison. Also, you could snatch up every last bit of my wealth. This isn't just cheating anymore. This is a literal crime. Several screenshots of WeChat chat logs popped up on the screen. My husband seems to be getting a bit suspicious lately. What should I do? What are you scared of? Just stick to the plan. Once he's locked up, you and Anan will both be mine. That $2 million cash deposit. Are they really going to believe it? As long as you bite down hard and swear that you saw it with your own eyes, that's all it takes. Internal Affairs would rather arrest the wrong guy than let someone slip away. As long as they take him into custody, we win. Those logs were the final straw that broke her completely. Joe Rui stared at the television screen, reading those disgusting conversations between her and Sun Pong. She finally broke down. No, it wasn't like that. He forced me. Sun Pong forced me to do it. He told me he loved me. He said that you were only going to treat me worse and worse. He said that only he could ever give me real happiness. Reporting you was his idea, too. He promised that as long as we took you down, we could be together forever. She was trying to scrub herself completely clean of all the blame. Even at a moment like this, she was still putting on a show. I turned off the television. The living room fell quiet again. I stood up, took out the 2 documents I had printed earlier from the study, and slammed them onto the coffee table right in front of her. One was the divorce agreement. Sign it. Just sign it. We'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau tomorrow and split up peacefully. I won't press criminal charges against you. I'll leave you with the last shred of dignity and let you walk away with nothing. That's my final offer. But if you refuse to sign all this evidence, including Anand's paternity test report, I'll print 100 copies. I'll send one to the court. The rest will be delivered straight to your parents and my parents. To every single relative in both of our families and to our workplaces. Sun Pong's workplace, too. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman you are, Joe Rui, and what kind of man Sun Pong is. By then, it won't just be money and a house that you lose. It will be every last ounce of your dignity as a human being. Joe Rui stared at the documents on the coffee table, then slowly looked up at me. The look in her eyes shifted from pure venom to desperate pleading, until finally, only a dead, hollow stare remained. I woke up very early the next day. Joe Rui hadn't slept at all. She sat on the couch like a lifeless statue. Those 2 documents were still sitting right there on the coffee table. She hadn't touched them. I didn't rush her, either. I just washed up and got dressed. I had much more important things to do today. Right before leaving, I gave her one last look. I'll give you 1 day to think it over. I need to see your signature by tomorrow morning. With that, I walked out the door. I didn't go to work. Instead, I drove straight to a law firm. This was Zhang Chengye, the most famous divorce lawyer in the city, whom I had found online during those 7 days. I met with lawyer Zhang at my scheduled appointment time. He was in his 40s, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and looking extremely sharp. Hello, Mr. Zhao. Lawyer Zhang and I shook hands. We took our seats, and I didn't waste any time with small talk. I pulled a flash drive out of my briefcase and placed it on the desk in front of him. Lawyer Zhang, I want a divorce. All the evidence is right in here. Lawyer Zhang nodded, and plugged the flash drive into his computer. He opened the folder, going through the files one by one. From the paternity test report to the list of assets, to all those sickening photos and text messages. His expression shifted from calm at first, to mild surprise, and finally, to dead serious. He reviewed everything very carefully, taking a solid 30 minutes. When he was done, he took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Mr. Zhao, to be completely honest with you, I've handled hundreds of divorce cases, but this is the very first time I've seen evidence compiled so devastatingly well. This evidence is more than enough to leave your wife completely defenseless in court. She'll absolutely be walking away with nothing. Then I'm hiring you. My demands are very simple. First, get this divorce done as fast as possible. Second, make sure she doesn't get a single penny. Third, she has to take full custody of Anan. I never want anything to do with that kid ever again. Not a problem. Legally speaking, since the child isn't biologically yours, you have zero obligation to provide child support. As for your assets, since she is entirely at fault here, And considering the malicious attempt to transfer and embezzle your assets, your premarital property is absolutely safe. The division of your marital assets will also lean entirely in your favor. Great. We agreed on the legal fees and signed the contract. Just as I was about to leave, I asked him one last question. Mr. Zhang, legally speaking, when it comes to that guy, what else can I do? Mr. Zhang pondered for a moment. The law can't really do much about simple adultery. But if you have rock-solid evidence proving he took part in and orchestrated the false accusations against you, we could hold him criminally liable. However, looking at the chat records you provided, they're incredibly cunning. A lot of it was just verbal agreements. It'll be extremely hard to form a complete chain of evidence. Compared to taking the criminal route, going after his workplace and his reputation might be a much more direct and effective way to strike back. His words were exactly what I was thinking. I understand. Thank you, Mr. Zhang. I walked out of the law firm. I felt half the weight lift off my chest. The legal weapon for my revenge was locked and loaded. Now, it was time for the other battlefront. I stood by the road and took out my phone. I didn't call Joe Rui. Instead, I dialed Director Zhang from my workplace. The call connected quickly. Hey, little Zhao, how's your time off going? Thanks for asking, Director. I've recovered perfectly. Director, whenever you're free, I'd like to get back to work as soon as possible. The man on the other end paused for a second, then chuckled. Sure thing, you're welcome back anytime. We clean your desk every day. Thank you, Director. Also, about that meeting you mentioned last time to restore my reputation. Oh, right. Do you want to keep it a small gathering or... Director, I think we can make it a bit bigger. I stared at the endless stream of traffic on the street, my eyes turning sharp. It would be best if all the middle management and the bureau could attend. After all, this incident caused quite a stir. I want my innocence to be known by as many people as possible. I wanted more than just a divorce. I was going to take back everything I lost. My reputation, my status, and my justice. Every single bit of it. The next morning, when I walked out of the guest room, Joe Rui was still sitting on the couch. She hadn't moved all night. Right in front of her were those two documents. The final page of the divorce agreement already had her signature on it. The handwriting was crooked and messy, as if she had used up every ounce of her strength. I walked over, picked up the document, and checked it. The property waiver was signed, too. She spoke, her voice as raspy as coarse sandpaper. I picked up the other document. I saw her signature and fingerprint. Good. I tucked the files into my briefcase. Get your ID, household register, and marriage certificate ready. I'll see you at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau at 9 a.m. I didn't spare her another glance, turning around to leave. Zhao Yi, she called out to me from behind. Is Anan really Sun Peng's daughter? Her voice actually held a trace of doubt. A glimmer of hope. I almost burst out laughing. Even at this point, she was still clinging to stupid fantasies. Or rather, she was trying to find an excuse for herself, to prove that she hadn't been deceiving me right from the very start. That's a question, you should go ask Sun Peng. I opened the door and stepped outside. The sun was shining beautifully. I drove to the office. It was 8:30 in the morning. A lot of my colleagues had just arrived. When we bumped into each other in the hallway, their expressions were pretty complicated. Some looked sympathetic, some were curious, and some just kept their distance. I completely ignored all of them, and walked straight to my office. The door was locked. I took out my keys and opened it. Inside, it was completely spotless. Director Zhang hadn't lied to me. He really did have Xiao Li clean it every day. I sat down, turned on my computer, and started going through my backlog of emails. At 9:30, Director Zhang's secretary knocked on the door. Section Chief Zhao, the director would like you to come to the main conference room. All right, I stood up and straightened my collar. I followed her over, and pushed open the conference room doors. Director Zhang was sitting at the head of the table. When he saw me, he waved me over. Come on over, Zhao Yi. Sit here. He pointed to the empty seat right next to him. I walked over and sat down. I could feel countless eyes staring at my back, glaring at me like spotlights. I could also see that, over in the corner of the room, sat Sun Peng. He was keeping his head down, completely afraid to even look at me. He looked like a completely different person compared to the day I was taken away. The meeting began. There was no pointless small talk. Director Zhang cut right to the chase. He started off with a few brief words about the importance of maintaining strict discipline and a strong work ethic in the office. Then, his tone shifted. Recently, a serious incident occurred right here in our department. Our colleague, Zhao Yi, was officially reported by someone claiming he was involved in financial misconduct. The conference room was dead silent. The Municipal Disciplinary Committee took this very seriously and immediately set up a special investigative task force. They spent 3 long months investigating Zhao Yi. Director Zhang's voice was deadly serious. The reason I called everyone here today is to formally announce the findings of that investigation. After a thorough review, the claims that Zhao Yi took a bribe of 2 million were completely fabricated. It was a malicious, targeted frame-up. The disciplinary committee has officially issued a statement to clear Zhao Yi's name and fully restore his reputation. He put the papers down and looked at me. Right here and now, on behalf of the entire management team, I want to offer my deepest apologies to Zhao Yi. We failed to protect our own people. We put you through hell. After saying that, he stood up and gave me a deep, respectful bow. The entire room gasped. Director Zhang, please, this isn't your fault. And it's not the department's fault. I quickly stood up and held him by the arms. Director Zhang straightened up and grasped my hands tightly. Haha, what a good man. He turned back to face the room. Zhao Yi is an absolute pillar of this department. For 15 long years he has worked tirelessly. He has always been completely clean and honest. This whole ordeal has taken a massive toll on him personally and on his family. It caused so much unnecessary pain. I hope that everyone in this office will take this as a serious lesson. Moving forward, we must stand firmly behind our colleagues, trust each other, and never let malicious rumors tear us apart. Applause began to break out. It started off a bit scattered, but quickly grew into a roaring ovation. I saw the look in many of my colleagues' eyes change from sympathy to admiration. My reputation was wiped clean in that moment. Director Zhang asked me to say a few words. I walked up to the microphone, looking out at the dense crowd below. My gaze finally landed on Sun Peng's pale face. Our eyes locked in the air for a second. He quickly dropped his head, looking like he'd just been burned. I picked up the mic, my voice clear and steady. Thank you to the organization for your trust, and thank you to the leadership for your concern. I've thought a lot these past 3 months. As a veteran who has worked here for 15 years, I have always believed in one thing: a clear conscience fears no false accusations. I trust the organization and I trust the law. I knew they would give me justice. And today, that justice has arrived. I am in the clear. But some things can't just be let go. My voice turned cold. False accusations and framing are not just attacks on me personally, but a smear on our entire team. And a trampling of organizational discipline. As for that person hiding in the dark, that shady coward trying to destroy someone else's life with such despicable tricks. I paused, my gaze sharp as a knife. I swept my eyes over Sun Peng again. He buried his head even lower, his shoulders trembling slightly. I hope the organization will investigate this to the very end, and show zero tolerance. After speaking, I faced the podium and the colleagues below and took a deep bow. Thunderous applause filled the conference room. And this time, everyone's applause was genuinely from the heart. After the meeting ended, my world finally grew quiet. Walking down the office hallway, every single person I ran into took the initiative to greet me. Section Chief Zhao, you're back. Their faces wore just the right amount of concern and warmth, as if those 3 months of isolation and suspicion had never happened. I replied to them one by one, keeping my expression perfectly calm. I went back to my office. The moment I sat down, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I picked it up. Zhao Yi, I'm at the tea house across from the office. Let's talk. It was Sun Peng. His voice was filled with exhaustion and fear. I have nothing to talk to you about. No, wait, I'm begging you, just 10 minutes. He sounded like he was about to cry. Fine. I hung up the phone, got up, and walked downstairs at a leisurely pace. There weren't many people in the tea house. Sun Peng had chosen a booth in the deepest corner. When he saw me, he looked at me like a savior, but also like he was looking at the Grim Reaper. His expression was incredibly complicated. He hadn't touched his tea at all. I sat down, poured myself a cup, and said, talk. Brother Yi, no, Section Chief Zhao. He was babbling incoherently. I heard everything you said at the meeting today. I know I was wrong. With a loud thud, he actually slid out of his seat and tried to kneel down before me. I leaned back in my chair, dodging him. Just say what you need to say. Cut the crap. The tea house waiter looked over with a weird expression. Sun Peng scrambled back up into his seat in a panic. Section Chief Zhao, about that incident. The report against you. It really wasn't my idea. It was Zhou Rui. It was sister-in-law. She insisted on doing it. She said the only way was if you went to jail, so she could be free. He started his little act again, using the exact same script as Zhou Rui, shifting all the blame to the other person. I just stared at him in silence. My quietness terrified him even more. Really, I swear, I tried to talk her out of it. I told her doing this was way too risky, too messed up. But she wouldn't listen. She was dead set on destroying you. He raised his hand as if he was swearing to God. Is that right? I took my phone out of my briefcase. I didn't even unlock it. I just turned the screen toward him. On the lock screen was a photo I had just set as the wallpaper. It was a picture of him and Zhou Rui, down by that rental apartment, hugging and kissing. I took a screenshot from a video a friend had sent me. Crystal clear. Sun Peng's eyes were glued to the phone screen. The color drained from his face even faster than it did in the conference room. His lips trembled. He tried to speak, but no sound came out. Do you want me to show you something else? Like your chat history? About how you two set me up? How you hid the assets? Your grand plan to leave your cousin-in-law completely penniless and rotting in jail? Sun Peng's body started shaking uncontrollably. Huge drops of sweat rolled down his forehead. Or maybe, we should talk about an. I dropped the final, crushing blow. You really like her, don't you? Every time you came to my house, you bought her the most expensive toys. The day she was born, you were even more excited than I was. I'm really curious, in what exact role were you caring for my daughter? Stop. Please, stop. Sun Peng finally broke down. He grabbed his head with both hands, letting out an agonized groan. Please, don't say any more. I put my phone away. I took a sip of my tea. It was already cold. Sun Peng, we go way back. I actually thought you were my friend. My family. My voice was terribly quiet. But every single word struck his heart like a sledgehammer. You destroyed my 15-year marriage. You destroyed every ounce of trust I had in my family. And you were going to destroy the rest of my life, too. Zhao Yi, I'm a monster. I'm worse than an animal. He looked up, his face covered in tears. I leaned in closer to him and whispered so only the two of us could hear. You have two choices now. 1. I hand all this evidence over to the disciplinary board. And to your bosses at work. Do you know what the penalty is for framing a government official? You know exactly what it is. Your fate will be 100 times worse than mine. 2. Before the sun comes up tomorrow, you voluntarily hand in your resignation. Then, you write a detailed confession. You write down exactly how you and Zhou Rui plotted this out. How you planned this whole thing step by step. You write down every single detail. You sign it, and you give it to me. Once you do those two things, you can get the hell out. Get out of this city. And never show your face in front of me again. I leaned back in my chair. Make your choice. Sun Peng slumped back in his seat, looking pale as a ghost. He knew he didn't have a choice. Compared to total ruin, and rotting in a jail cell, packing up and leaving quietly was the only lifeline he could grab hold of. Coming out of the tea house, I glanced at the time. 8:50. There were still 10 minutes until our agreed time. I drove there unhurriedly and parked the car. I walked to the entrance. Zhou Rui was already waiting there. She was wearing a gray trench coat, her hair casually tied up. She had no makeup on, looking pale and haggard. She was holding a cloth bag which contained all the documents we needed for today. When she saw me, she quickly averted her eyes. She didn't say a word, and I couldn't be bothered to speak either. We walked in one after the other, like two strangers just running an errand. We took a number and waited in line. The entire process was dead silent. Around us were couples coming and going. Some were beaming with joy to get married. Others looked miserable, here to file their paperwork. Our silence in this kind of environment felt completely out of place. Finally, they called our number. We walked over to the window and sat down. Are you two getting divorced voluntarily? Yes. Have you both agreed on how to divide the property? What about child custody? Is that all settled? It's all clearly written in the agreement. The lady at the counter picked up our divorce papers. She skimmed through it quickly. When she saw that the wife voluntarily gave up all property and that the daughter would be raised solely by the mother, with the father paying zero child support, she looked up. She gave Zhou Rui a surprised look. Zhou Rui buried her head even lower. The lady didn't ask any more questions. It was, after all, someone else's family business. Just fill this out. We both filled out the forms in total silence. I wrote very quickly. Name, Zhao Yi. Ethnicity, Han. Under the reason for divorce, I just wrote 4 words. Irreconcilable differences. I gave her that last bit of dignity. We finished the forms and took the photos. When the heavy stamp slammed down onto those 2 red divorce certificates, I saw Zhou Rui's body suddenly tremble. It was all over. All done. I picked up my copy, stood up, and turned to leave. Without a single word of goodbye. Walking out the doors of the Civil Affairs Bureau. The sunlight was blinding. I felt like a massive weight had just been lifted off my shoulders. Zhou Rui followed me out. Zhao Yi. I stopped and looked back at her. This would be our very last conversation as husband and wife. Can I go back and pack up my and An's things? You have 2 hours. I'll wait for you downstairs. When we got back to the apartment building, I didn't go upstairs. I leaned against the car and lit a cigarette. It was the first one I had smoked in 3 months. The smoke swirled around me, but my mind was completely clear. Less than an hour later, Zhou Rui came down. She was dragging 2 large suitcases with an walking right beside her. The little girl was clutching her mother's shirt, staring at me timidly. Her eyes were red. She had clearly been crying. I put out my cigarette and walked over. Give me the car keys. That car was under her name, but I was the one who paid for it. The agreement made it clear that it belonged to me. She took it out of her bag and handed it over. Where are you planning to go now? Back to my mom's place. Sun Pong wired me some money this morning and then completely blocked me. He said he's leaving the city. I felt absolutely nothing hearing that. This was the price she had to pay. You're on your own now. I left her with those parting words, pulled the car door open, and got in. I started the engine, and the car pulled out of the neighborhood. Through the rearview mirror, I watched the figures of the mother and daughter grow smaller and smaller, until they faded into a blurry little speck. The very first thing I did when I got home was call a locksmith. Hey, is this the locksmith? I need my locks changed. The highest security grade for the whole house. Half an hour later, the locksmith arrived. Listening to the buzzing of the electric drill, and smelling the machine oil, I knew the very last trace of anyone else's presence in this house was finally being wiped clean. After seeing the locksmith out, I stood in the empty living room. This place was finally, completely mine alone again. I took off my coat and walked into the study. I poured myself a glass of whiskey. My phone buzzed. It was a file transfer notification. I opened it. It was from Sun Pong. A Word document titled Confession. I opened it up, reading it word by word. It detailed exactly how he got involved with my wife, how he found out Anin was his daughter, how he lured Joe Rui in step by step, and ultimately orchestrated that vicious scheme. It was written with such apparent sincerity. Filled with deep regret, I finished reading it and hit save, then dragged the document into an encrypted folder. This was my ultimate insurance policy. I walked over to the window with my glass. Outside, the evening lights were just coming on. A sea of lit windows. The city was still bustling with heavy traffic, as if nothing had changed at all. But my world had been turned completely upside down, and then rebuilt with my own 2 hands. I took a sip of my drink, the spicy liquid sliding down my throat, leaving a trail of burning heat. I had won this war. Won it cleanly. Won it completely. But there was no wild ecstasy in my heart. Only a calmness as deep as the ocean. The revenge was over. The sun would rise as usual tomorrow, and my brand new life was just beginning. The next day, I woke up to an absolute, profound silence. No noisy morning wake-ups from Anin. No clattering of pots and pans from Joe Rui in the kitchen. Nor the careful footsteps of the hourly cleaner. The entire 180 square meter house was so empty. It felt like a giant echo chamber. I lay there in bed, staring up at the ceiling. I just looked at it for a long, long time. My heart no longer held that intense tension of revenge, nor the wild joy of a completed mission. There was only a massive, overwhelming emptiness now that the dust had settled. I had spent half a month cutting through the mess with a sharp knife, completely severing all the rotting roots of the past 15 years. Now, I was standing on top of a perfectly cleared-out wasteland, surrounded by none of the people or things that used to make me sick. But at the same time, there was absolutely nothing left. I got out of bed and washed up, and cooked myself a bowl of noodles. Just some very simple plain noodles, flavored with nothing but salt and a few drops of soy sauce. After eating, I washed the bowl until it was squeaky clean. I put it back in the cupboard. Then, I picked up my phone. I called my mom. The phone rang for a long time before she finally picked up. Hello, Yi? Mom, it's me. Are you okay? Did you have that meeting at work? Did they give you a hard time? The day I was taken away, the news reached my parents very quickly. The 2 of them were so worried they almost fell ill. Over these past 3 months, they reached out to countless connections. Begged so many people, but they couldn't even get to see me. I can only imagine how they suffered through it all. I'm fine, Mom. It's all over now. We had the meeting at work yesterday. Director Zhang personally cleared my name. Oh, thank God. Thank God. My poor boy, you've suffered so much. Because of what happened to you. Your dad's hair has gone half white. My heart ached. Where's Dad? He went to the park to play chess. I didn't tell him you called. I was afraid he'd get too worked up again. Mom, I need to tell you something. I paused, trying to find the right words. Joe Rui and I got divorced yesterday. The other end of the line instantly went dead silent. What did you say? Divorced? Why? Is it because she reported you? Yi, listen to me. Couples don't hold grudges overnight. She was probably just confused for a moment. Mom, I didn't want to tell my parents the ugly truth. That Anin isn't my biological daughter. I was afraid they couldn't handle the shock. To them, Anin is their one and only granddaughter. She is the apple of their eye, who they've loved dearly for 5 years. Letting them know the truth would be too cruel. She hooked up with someone else a long time ago. Reporting me was something they planned together. They wanted to lock me up, so they could be together. There was another dead silence on the phone. This time, I could clearly hear my mom's heavy breathing. That bitch. How dare she? How has our Zhao family ever mistreated her? You were so good to her. How could she do something so vile? It's all in the past, Mom. The divorce is finalized, and she left with absolutely nothing. From now on, we have absolutely no ties to her family. What about Anin? Who does Anin stay with? She's staying with her. Absolutely not. Anin is our Zhao family's granddaughter. We can't let her stay with that kind of woman. Mom, I've already made my decision about this. From now on, just pretend you and Dad never had this granddaughter. After I said those words, it felt like a hand violently crushed my heart. It hurts, but ripping the band-aid off now is better than a lifetime of pain. My mom went silent on the other end. She's a smart woman. She probably heard an even deeper, unshakable resolve in my tone. She didn't press the matter any further. Mom understands. Yi, take good care of yourself, okay? Whenever you miss home, just come back to us. Yeah, I know. I hung up the phone. It felt like I had just fought another war. I sat on the sofa for a very long time, until the sunlight poured in from the window, shining on my face, bringing a faint touch of warmth. In the afternoon, I headed back to the office. Chief Zhang called me into his office. He even made me a cup of tea himself. Zhao Yi, have you sorted out everything at home? It's all taken care of. Thank you for asking, Chief Zhang. He nodded, and let out a sigh. Zhou Rui, sigh. I watched the two of you get married. I never thought it would end up like this. As for that Sun Peng, he handed in his resignation yesterday morning. He said he had family issues, and had to head back to his hometown. I know, I replied with a completely blank face. Sun Peng's written confession was locked right in my drawer. He better never cross my path again for the rest of his life. Chief Zhang looked at me, his eyes showing a hint of admiration and approval. Zhao Yi, the fact that you bounced back so quickly is impressive. You went through a massive ordeal, yet you kept your cool, and handled everything with such grace and proper boundaries. Honestly, I really admire you. What happened this time was an absolute disaster for you, but it was also a real test of character. His tone shifted. The city is launching a new smart city project very soon. It involves coordinating with multiple departments. It's a really tough nut to crack. I recommended you to the higher-ups. I want you to take the lead and build a special task force. My heart skipped a beat. This wasn't just some random project. It was a signal, a clear signal that they were planning to promote me. If you pull this project off, it's going to be absolutely crucial for your future career. Chief Zhang gave me a meaningful look. Well, are you up for it? I stood up straight, and gave Chief Zhang a firm nod. I am. Prepping for the new project was a massive undertaking, so I poured every ounce of my energy into it. Meetings, field research, drafting proposals, smoothing out interdepartmental politics. I worked late into the night, every single day. Being this swamped was like the perfect medicine. It left me no time to dwell on all that absolute mess. It also made me feel like I was finally finding my true bearing in life again. Slowly but surely, my life seemed to be getting back on track. But, just when I thought I could completely leave the past behind me, a phone call shattered all that peace. It was my ex-mother-in-law calling. When I saw her number pop up, I almost hung up right then and there, but after hesitating for a second, I answered it anyway. Zhao Yi, you absolute monster. Do you have no conscience at all? The second the call connected, she unleashed a vicious wave of curses. Look at what you've done to our Zhou Rui. You divorced her and left her without a single penny. How can you be so utterly heartless? She gave you a daughter. She slaved away for you for years. And this is how you treat her? My ex-mother-in-law's voice was so piercing. It felt like my eardrums were going to burst. I held the phone away from my ear, and just listened in silence. Once she finally tired herself out from yelling, and was left gasping for air, I brought the phone back to my ear. Are you done? You owe our family an explanation. You have to compensate Zhou Rui. The house, the car, the savings, she gets 50%. Or else we're coming to your office to make a scene. We'll report you to the disciplinary committee. We'll tell them you're a deadbeat who abandoned his wife. Abandoned your wife and child. Oh, really? Are you absolutely sure you want to know why I did it? There was a stunned pause on the other end. Isn't it just because she reported you to your bosses? Wasn't she just doing it for your own good? She got conned. Looks like Zhou Rui didn't tell you the truth. I walked to the window, watching the endless stream of cars below. Then let me tell you two things. Number one, your daughter, along with her lover, that guy Sun Peng, meticulously orchestrated a plan, and framed me. Their whole goal was to throw me in prison, so they could legally seize every single penny I own. That is not a moment of weakness. That is a crime. And number two, I paused, enunciating every single word. Your daughter had another man's child, and made me play the fool, raising her for 5 years. The granddaughter you've been holding for 5 years has absolutely zero blood relation to my Zhao family. After I said that, the phone went dead silent. I could just picture the old lady on the other end. What her face looked like right now. Was she shocked, ashamed, or furious? I didn't care. A full minute passed, and there was a loud smack over the line, like the phone had hit the floor. Then the call disconnected. I stared at the dark screen, and let out a long, heavy sigh. The very last person in this world who could possibly come bother me had been dealt with. I opened my phone contacts, found the group for my ex-in-laws, and hit delete. wiping out every single contact inside. From now on, our paths were completely severed, never to cross again. That evening, alone in the house, I cooked myself a massive dinner. 4 dishes and a soup. All the things I used to love eating, but Joe Rui always found too tedious. And flat out refused to cook. I popped open a bottle of red wine, poured myself a glass, and sat completely alone at the massive dining table, taking my time to eat. The house was dead quiet and totally empty. But for the very first time, I didn't feel lonely at all. It was an unprecedented sense of freedom and relief. I didn't have to bend over backwards for anyone anymore. I didn't have to fake a single emotion. I was just me, living purely for myself. After dinner, I gave the entire house a deep clean. I packed up absolutely everything that had any trace of Joe Rui in and dragged it all down to the garbage dump. In the basement, photo albums, toys, their clothes, their shoes. When I tossed out that very last trash bag, and finally stood up straight, my whole body felt incredibly light. Back upstairs, I drew a hot bath. Lying there in the tub, I actually started brainstorming how to completely remodel the place. Tear out all that tacky decor and replace it with the clean, minimalist style I actually like. I'd gut Anand's old nursery and turn it into my personal study and home gym. As I pictured it all, I actually burst out laughing. It was the very first genuine smile I had in months. Time flew by. Before I knew it, a whole month had passed. The Smart City project was moving forward flawlessly under my watch. The task force I was leading was incredibly efficient, and our results were undeniable. We got specifically praised by the city leaders a few times. Naturally, my reputation at the office skyrocketed. The way people looked at me shifted from all that initial pity and gossip to pure, genuine respect and admiration. Nobody was whispering about my family drama behind my back anymore. Work had become my entire life, and I was absolutely loving it. Then, one afternoon, right after I wrapped up a coordination meeting, Director Zhang had his secretary call me into his office. Walking into his office, I noticed the vibe was a little different. Several deputy directors were actually there too. "Have a seat, Zhao Yi." Director Zhang pointed to the chair across from him, wearing that familiar, meaningful smile of his. I pretty much knew what was coming, but I kept my cool and sat down. "Comrade Zhao Yi, we asked you here today to announce an official decision. After deliberation by the Bureau's leadership and approval from the City Council, it's been decided to appoint you as Deputy Director of our Bureau, overseeing operations and IT development." He finished speaking and led the applause. The other Deputy Directors immediately joined in, all smiling warmly. "Congratulations, Director Zhao, so young and promising." Even though I saw it coming, when the moment actually arrived, I couldn't stop my heart from beating just a little bit faster. Going from a section chief who was framed and on the verge of being locked up, to now being part of the executive team as deputy director, these past 2 short months, my life had felt like an absolute roller coaster. Thank you for believing in me. And thank you, everyone. I stood up, and gave them all a deep, respectful bow. There were no impassioned speeches, just my most sincere gratitude. The official appointment papers came through quickly, and my office was moved from a standard single room on the 3rd floor, up to the deputy director's suite on the 5th floor. It was much bigger, and so much quieter. Standing by the window in my new office, I could overlook more than half the city. The view was incredibly wide, and my mind opened up right along with it. When I got off work that evening, I didn't head straight home like I usually do. Instead, I just drove around the city, totally aimless. Eventually, I parked at a park by the river. I stepped out of the car, and took a slow stroll along the riverside path. The river breeze blew past, carrying a crisp, misty chill that gently brushed against my face. A cruise boat drifted along the water, leaving long ripples in its wake. Across the river stood the city's downtown business district, packed with towering skyscrapers. The dazzling lights outlined such a vibrant, bustling skyline. I found a bench and sat down, taking it all in. Memories from the last few months began flashing through my mind. The absolute shock of being taken away by investigators. The suffocating pressure in the interrogation room. The utter breakdown when I saw that paternity test. The cold resolve when I finally confronted her. The hollow emptiness after the divorce. And finally, the peace I felt right now. It all felt like some twisted, bizarre dream. But now, I was finally awake. The woman I once thought I'd spend the rest of my life with, was now just a stranger. And the child I thought was my own flesh and blood, had vanished into the crowd. That home, built entirely on betrayal and lies, had been torn down and rebuilt by my own 2 hands. I had lost a lot, but I had gained so much more. Like a completely clear, awakened mind. A genuine chance at rebirth. I didn't know what my future was going to look like. Whether I'd ever meet someone else and start a new family. I honestly didn't know, and I didn't want to think about it either. All I knew was that, starting today, I was going to live a brilliantly beautiful life, just for myself. I pulled out my phone, and saw a message that a colleague from the project team had sent an hour ago. It was the final version of a technical proposal. I opened the file, and began reading it carefully. As the night grew deeper, the river breeze turned colder, but my heart was filled with an unprecedented warmth and brightness. The past was finally behind me. My new life was bathing in the starlight, setting sail. Life after being promoted to deputy director was completely different from before. I now had a dedicated driver and secretary. The documents I had to review every day piled up like a mountain, and the meetings I attended shifted from the departmental level to the municipal level. Being constantly busy became the main theme of my life. This high-intensity pace was like a solid firewall, completely isolating me from the past. I thought my days would just flow peacefully forward in the flood of work, until my mother called me again. "Yi, have you been doing okay lately?" Her voice carried a trace of cautious probing. Ever since we parted on bad terms last time, we hadn't spoken on the phone for almost a month. "I'm doing fine, Mom. The project is going smoothly. How are you and Dad holding up?" I leaned back in my office chair, looking at the blue sky outside the window. "We're both fine. It's just..." She hesitated. "I went grocery shopping yesterday, and ran into your old neighbor. You know, Auntie Lee, the one who lives across from Joe Rui's family." My heart sank. I didn't say a word. She told me that Joe Rui is having a really hard time right now. After she went back to her parents' house, they found out about everything. They felt completely humiliated. Her dad locked her in the house, refusing to let her go out, and he curses at anyone he sees. Her mom cries every single day, wailing about what sins she committed. To raise a daughter like that. I listened quietly, my face completely devoid of expression. This was exactly what she deserved. Auntie Lee said, "The most pitiful one is little Anan." Hearing that name, the hand gripping my phone unconsciously tightened. That child is constantly despised by her grandparents. They call her a burden, a little bastard. Joe Rui herself is mentally unstable, and can't even take care of her. The poor kid has lost so much weight. She doesn't say a word all day. She just sits in the corner hugging a doll. A couple of days ago, Auntie Lee even heard her crying secretly in her room, asking her ragdoll, "Is it because Anan was a bad girl? So Daddy doesn't want me anymore?" At this point, my mom was already choking back tears. "Yi, Mom knows you can't stand them, but the child is innocent. She is only 5 years old. What could she possibly understand? Whenever I think about how lively and cute she used to be, and now, Mom..." I abruptly cut her off. My voice as cold as ice. I stood up from my chair, walked over to the window, and looked at the crowd below, tiny as ants. That sentence, "Is it because Anan was a bad girl, so Daddy doesn't want me anymore?" felt like a red-hot steel needle, viciously piercing the softest part of my heart. It hurt, a sharp, long-forgotten pain, but I couldn't afford to be soft-hearted. I couldn't take a single step back. This matter ends here. I am completely done with them. Whether they live or die is none of my business. From now on, don't ever bring them up to me again. Yizzy, if you still consider me your son, then promise me." On the other end of the line was my mother's long silence, followed by a heavy, stifled sigh. "I understand." I hung up the phone, and stood by the window for a very long time. My mind was flooded with Anand's little face, covered in tears and completely confused. I truly believed she would be the most precious treasure of my entire life. I used to hold her, teach her how to speak, take her to the park, carry her on my shoulders, and listen to her giggle. But all those warm memories have now turned into poisoned blades, slicing my heart to shreds. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. When I opened them again, my gaze had returned to its usual calm and resolve. I picked up the project proposal from the desk, forcing my attention back to the dense text and charts. The past was dead. I couldn't let her shadow haunt my future anymore. The Smart City project had entered deep waters, and the most critical part of it was the security and integration of cross-departmental data citywide. This was a technical nightmare as well as an administrative challenge. Our internal tech team just didn't have the bandwidth, so we had to bring in top-tier external partners. After several rounds of brutal bidding and screening, the leading enterprise in domestic information security, Universal Tech, successfully won the bid. A week later, our first project alignment meeting kicked off in our bureau's conference room. Universal Tech's team was surprisingly young, led by a project manager named Su Ching. She looked under 30, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. Her long hair was tied back in a sleek ponytail, with light makeup on her face, and her eyes were bright and piercing. She didn't bother with unnecessary small talk, diving straight into the agenda right after her introduction. Halfway through the meeting, it was our turn to present our preliminary data architecture. My subordinate, Section Chief Lee from the tech department, was pitching confidently on stage. "Excuse me, let me just stop you right there. Chief Lee, regarding the two-way sandbox data exchange model you just mentioned, we believe there is a fatal logic flaw." The conference room instantly fell dead silent. Ms. Su, we based this model on cutting-edge international standards. And it's been vetted multiple times. There's no way it has. Flaw isn't the model itself, but your application scenario. You completely ignored the system heterogeneity across different departments, as well as the issue of permission decay during the data cleaning and standardization process. With your current design, the second a malicious code bypasses the front-end firewall, it could exploit this permission decay flaw to laterally infect at least 70% of our connected systems within 3 minutes, causing a citywide data blackout. She spoke incredibly fast, but her logic was airtight. A rapid-fire barrage of technical jargon and precise data left Chief Lee completely speechless. Fine beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. The atmosphere in the room grew noticeably awkward. Everyone's eyes darted to me, waiting to see how I, the newly appointed deputy director, would handle this power move. Looking at that confident and focused woman by the whiteboard, I didn't feel upset at all. Instead, a real sense of admiration washed over me. Sue, he was right. This was definitely our blind spot. Leave the professional work to the professionals. We're all ears for Universal Tech's insights. My response really eased the tension in the room. Su Qing glanced at me too, a faint hint of surprise flashing in her eyes. The rest of the time was basically her solo show. The solutions she proposed were logically tight and brilliantly designed. She didn't just fix the security risks we missed. She even optimized the data processing efficiency. The meeting, originally scheduled to end at 5 in the afternoon, dragged on until 7 in the evening. After the meeting ended, the tech teams from both sides immediately split up to tweak the details based on the new plan. Su Qing and I stayed behind in meeting room 7 for a final review. Director Zhao, I didn't expect you to be so open-minded. When it comes to tech, the experts take the lead. There's no need to throw my rank around. You're much better than I imagined. Right back at you, to take such a complex project and organize it so perfectly in the early stages. Your management skills really impress me too, Director Zhao. This was our first time stepping away from the project and having a real personal chat. My stomach let out a really poorly timed growl. I'll order some takeout. Does pizza work? If so, my treat. Consider it a thank you for your support today, Director Zhao. So there we were, in the empty meeting room, eating pizza and drinking soda. We talked about so many things, from the future of artificial intelligence to the struggles of the big data industry. I realized she wasn't just a tech genius. She also had incredible insights. Chatting with her was an absolute pleasure. Lying in bed that night, my mind wasn't spinning with Zhou Rui's betrayal anymore, or Anan's tears. Instead, it was filled with a fresh, vibrant figure, and our debate over algorithm ethics. I realized that, without even noticing, a new light had shined into my world. The partnership with Universal Tech went even smoother than I expected. Su Qing's team showed an incredible level of professionalism and dedication. Under her leadership, the toughest technical hurdles of the project were knocked down one by one. My interactions with her grew more frequent too. We had quick meetings almost every day, and deep reviews every single week. We pulled all-nighters together tweaking proposals, and argued over technical details until we were red in the face. She was brilliant and a total workaholic. I often saw her slump back in her chair after a meeting, pinching the bridge of her nose with pure exhaustion on her face. But the second she got back to work, she was like a fully wound-up warrior all over again. In her, I saw a long-lost, pure kind of passion, that kind of unadulterated love for her career without any hidden motives. That feeling really drew me in, but I always kept things completely professional and restrained with her. My failed marriage was like an invisible scar, constantly reminding me not to trust anyone too easily, especially women. Then, one afternoon, right after lunch, I got a call from my buddy, Old Wong. He sounded super excited, maybe even gloating a little. Yi, guess what crazy thing I just found out? Come on, don't keep me in suspense. About that guy Sun Peng, a friend of mine from back home. Bumped into him by chance a couple days ago. You would never guess the pathetic state he is in right now. I didn't say a word. I just listened quietly. That bastard conspiring with your wife back then, it had absolutely nothing to do with any bullshit romance. He was playing the futures market on the side, and got himself into a massive mountain of debt. People were after him, and he was hiding everywhere. What he really wanted was your money and your house. He just used his relationship with Zhou Rui as a stepping stone, using that stupid woman as a pawn. All that crap about the baby being his, and how they would live happily ever after, were all just complete lies to trick her. His whole goal was just to make her dead set on helping to lock you up behind bars. Hearing this, I didn't feel much of a ripple in my heart. I had already guessed about 70 or 80% of it anyway. After he packed his bags and got the hell out of your house, didn't he go back to his hometown to lay low? Well, he didn't even manage to hide for a few days before his creditors tracked him down, and those guys are not to be messed with. They broke his leg and locked him up in some cheap motel. demanding his family pay up to ransom him. But how could a family like his ever come up with that kind of cash? His parents went to beg the creditors several times, practically getting on their knees, but it was no use. Now here comes the best part. Do you know how he finally got away? He took his own biological sister, a girl who had just started college, and practically sold her off to that creditor as a mistress. He traded the rest of his sister's life for his own freedom. My breathing stopped for a second. Even a vicious tiger doesn't eat its own cubs. I always thought Sun Pong was just greedy and toxic, but I never imagined his humanity had been wiped out to this extent. To save his own skin, he would sacrifice absolutely everything, including the happiness and dignity of his own flesh and blood. This was the kind of man Zhou Rui fell in love with. For a man like this, she destroyed our home and ruined her own entire life. How pathetic, and how absolutely ridiculous. Yi, are you still listening? I'm here. That friend of mine sent me a photo. Do you want to see it? Send it over. Soon, my phone buzzed. I opened the picture. The photo was taken at a noisy, chaotic train station. Sun Pong was wearing a cheap tracksuit, one leg in a cast, leaning on a crutch. His face was all black and blue, his eyes filled with sheer terror and numbness as he squeezed into a crowd of migrant workers, getting ready to board a slow green train heading south. That cousin who once talked and laughed in my house, dressed in a sharp suit, is now like a miserable stray dog. No, even worse than a dog. I stared at that photo for a long time. I felt no thrill of revenge in my heart, nor the slightest bit of pity. Only a barren, cold indifference. Karma, what goes around comes around. He chose his own fate. With a flick of my finger, I hit the delete button. Along with that photo, that name, and that unbearable past, all completely erased from my world. The sunlight outside the window was just perfect. I stood up, poured a cup of hot tea, and walked toward the meeting room. Su Qing and her team should have arrived by now. In this new life, there are much more important battles to fight. I can't, and I don't want to look back anymore. After being promoted to deputy director, my time was shattered into countless tiny fragments. Endless meetings, endless documents, and endless office politics to deal with. I felt like a spinning top moving at top speed, unable to stop for even a second. But, this kind of busyness was a relief to me. It left me with absolutely no time to dwell on the past, and it gave me a sense of purpose. So I was no longer just tied to a broken family. The Smart City project, with the combined efforts of myself and Su Qing's team, had successfully completed its first phase of architecture building and stress testing. This was a major milestone. As per usual, the Bureau was going to organize a celebration dinner. The venue was already set, the most high-end hotel in the city. But at the very last minute, I vetoed the idea. I moved the dinner to a place near the office, an unassuming private restaurant. I didn't invite too many higher-ups, only the core members of both project teams. Director Zhao, you're really saving us money here. It's not about saving money. The food at a fancy hotel is all about showing off. But the food here is about genuine connection. Our two teams have been fighting side by side for so long. We're already like family. There's no need for all that fake formality. My words instantly warmed up the room. Those young engineers from Wanyu Tech finally dropped their awkwardness. Su Qing was sitting right next to me. She wasn't wearing her usual business suit today, but a beige cashmere sweater instead. Her long hair was draped casually over her shoulders, softening her usual corporate edge and giving her a much gentler vibe. Director Zhao, a toast to you. You are the most unique client I have ever worked with. Unique how? More like a comrade in arms than a boss. After saying that, she tilted her head back and downed her glass in one gulp. Her tolerance for alcohol totally caught me off guard. Halfway through the dinner, everyone had quite a bit to drink, and the conversation slowly drifted from work to our personal lives. Director Zhao, you're so young and successful. Your wife must be gorgeous, right? The moment those words left his mouth, the atmosphere at the table instantly froze. My secretary, Xiao Li, went pale and was just about to chew him out. I raised my hand and stopped him. I grabbed the bottle and poured myself a full glass. Then I stood up. I don't have a wife. I recently got divorced. Everyone was absolutely stunned. That engineer looked like he had just seen a ghost. But it's fine. It's all in the past. With that, I downed my drink in one shot. Su Qing just quietly stared at me the whole time. There was no curiosity in her eyes. And no pity either. Just a faint, understanding calmness. After the dinner wrapped up, everyone went their separate ways. Su Qing had quite a bit to drink too. Her cheeks were flushed, and she was a little unsteady on her feet. I'll take you home. No need to trouble yourself, Director Zhao. I can just grab a cab. Get in. My tone left no room for argument. She gave me a look, didn't push back, and opened the door to sit in the passenger seat. It was really quiet in the car. I turned on the music. A soothing instrumental track. Why did you get divorced? She suddenly spoke up, shattering the silence. I didn't expect her to ask so directly. My grip on the steering wheel tightened a bit. It's nothing. We just didn't click, I said, using the most generic excuse. She turned her head, looking out at the dazzling city lights, and didn't press the matter. My parents got divorced when I was in college. My dad hooked up with his secretary. My mom fought him on it for a long time, but eventually, she just gave up and moved far away. She sounded like she was telling someone else's story. Her tone was as casual as if she were talking about today's weather. Since then, I learned a hard truth. What truth? Lean on a mountain, and it might fall. Lean on people, and they will walk away. The only person you can truly count on is yourself. That's why I work so hard. I need to make myself strong enough. So strong that I don't ever need to rely on anyone else. She turned back to look at me, her eyes shining incredibly bright in the darkness. I saw my own reflection in her eyes. We were exactly the same kind of people, hurt by the ones closest to us and then using a tough shell to wrap ourselves up tightly, layer by layer. The car pulled up outside her apartment building. She unbuckled her seatbelt. Thanks for dropping me off. No problem. She pushed the door open and stepped out. After taking a couple of steps, she turned back, bent down, and gave me a soft smile. Zhao Yi, honestly, you look a lot better when you smile than when you scowl. With that, she turned around and walked into the building without looking back. I sat in the car, watching her figure disappear, completely stunned for a long time. It felt like a tiny crack had just formed on the deeply frozen lake of my heart. After that night, the relationship between Su Qing and me shifted in a subtle way. We were still partners at work. And we'd still argue until we were red in the face over a disagreement. But outside of work, we had developed this unspoken, undeniable chemistry. When I skipped meals for meetings, she'd quietly leave a sandwich on my desk. And when she stayed up late working, I'd drive her home. We never talked about each other's pasts, but it was as if with every shared glance, we understood each other's scars. This feeling was like a glass of warm water on a winter day. Not boiling hot, but just enough to warm the heart. My life seemed to be moving in a brand new, brighter direction. I almost believed that all those painful memories were finally behind me. Until that Saturday afternoon, when I went back to my parents' place for dinner. After the meal, my mom pulled me aside all mysteriously and practically forced a photo into my hands. She said it was her old army buddy's daughter, who was also a civil servant, and wanted me to get to know her. I turned her down, shaking my head with a wry smile. Leaving my parents' place, it was still quite early. I didn't want to go straight back to my empty house, so I drove to the biggest Xinhua bookstore in the city. I wanted to pick up a few professional books on urban planning and management. The place was filled with the quiet, comforting scent of books. I got lost in the joy of browsing, feeling completely relaxed, as I was carrying a few thick books and heading to the checkout. I passed through the children's section, and a figure, both familiar and distant, suddenly caught my eye without warning. It was Zhou Rui. She was crouching in front of a bookshelf, as if she were looking for a book. She had lost so much weight, she was practically skin and bones. Her hair, which she used to style so carefully, was just tied up in a messy knot, revealing a pale, haggard face. She was wearing a faded, washed-out jacket, looking nothing like the pampered woman she used to be. I looked away from her, and my eyes fell on a tiny little figure right beside her. She was holding a rag doll missing an arm, just sitting quietly on the floor. It was an in. She had gotten so thin, too. Her little face had lost its rosy glow. It looked kind of sallow now. Those eyes, that used to sparkle like dark little grapes, now looked completely clouded over. Dull and lifeless, she just sat there in silence. Not crying, not making a fuss, like a broken doll forgotten by the whole world. At that moment, it felt like an invisible hand had violently squeezed my heart. It just stopped beating. Everything my mom had said, all those things Auntie Lee had described, suddenly turned into real, sharp blades, slicing through me. Piece by painful piece, I subconsciously took a step back, and hid behind a tall bookshelf. Just looking at them made it hard for me to even breathe. Zhou Rui finally found a book. It was a super thin, discounted fairy tale book. She stood up, and gently pulled on an in, let's go home. Her voice sounded so exhausted and raspy, but an in didn't move. She just looked up, staring at her blankly. Zhou Rui let out a heavy sigh, and bent down to pick her up. And right then, Anen's gaze drifted over Zhou Rui's shoulder, looked through the gap in the bookshelf, and she saw me. Our eyes met, and in that split second, time seemed to completely freeze. Her eyes were blank at first, then confused, and then, there was this incredibly cautious, faint glimmer of hope mixed with fear. Her little lips trembled, but no sound came out. This little girl, who used to joyfully throw herself into my arms, screaming "Daddy" at the top of her lungs, was now just standing far away, staring at me so timidly, like she was trying to figure out If I was just a hallucination. Jo Rui noticed something was wrong with her daughter too. She followed Anen's gaze, turned her head, and saw me. The color drained from her face, turning deathly pale. Panic, intense shame, deep embarrassment. A million emotions crashed across her face all at once. Like a cat whose tail just got stepped on, she snatched Anen up, using the child's body to hide her own face. And practically fled in terror. She stumbled and ran through the crowd, disappearing through the bookstore's exit. I just stood there, completely frozen. The heavy academic books I was holding suddenly felt light as a feather. My hands were shaking, my heart was aching so badly. Not for Jo Rui. That woman doesn't deserve a single drop of my emotion anymore. It was for the child. That poor kid who got dragged into the filthy, ugly mess of the adult world. That innocent, pitiful little girl. The way she looked at me was like a rusty key, violently twisting open memories I had sealed away a long time ago. It was as if I could see her again, acting all sweet and cuddly in my arms. I could hear her sweet little babbling, and feel her soft, tiny hands wrapping tightly around my fingers. All that warmth I had tried so hard to forget had now turned into a bone-chilling cold. I put the book back on the shelf and basically fled the store. I got into my car, slammed the door shut, and completely blocked out the rest of the world. I slumped over the steering wheel and just closed my eyes, but in the darkness, that look in Anen's eyes only grew clearer. It was full of confusion, and a heartbreaking trace of absolute despair, like she'd been abandoned. I thought I had won. I thought I had crushed all my enemies under my feet. I thought I was completely bulletproof. But it wasn't until this very moment that I realized there was another casualty in this war. And I was the one who pushed her into the abyss with my own two hands. That chance encounter at the bookstore was like a stone thrown into a quiet lake, stirring up endless ripples in my heart. It completely messed with my head. I couldn't help it. The next day was Monday. During our regular project meeting, I was completely zoned out the whole time. Su Qing was up there giving the latest tech update, and she kept glancing over at me. Whenever she asked for my input, I just gave a vague or told her, just handle it. My strange behavior was obvious to everyone. After the meeting wrapped up, Su Qing didn't leave right away. She walked over to me and set a cup of hot coffee down in front of me. "You're totally off your game today. Did something happen?" I picked up the coffee and took a sip. It was really bitter. "It's nothing. I just didn't sleep well last night." Su Qing gave me a long, hard look, but she didn't call me out on my lie. "If there's an issue with the project, you can come to me anytime. But if it's a personal issue, I expect you to pull yourself together, and fast. I need my partner at 100%. Her words were blunt. Maybe even a little cold. But for some reason, hearing that actually made me breathe a sigh of relief. Honestly, rather than tiptoeing around with pity and comfort, this kind of logical wake-up call was exactly what I needed. "I know." I nodded and threw myself completely into my work. I blasted through a mountain of paperwork, smoothed over disputes between 3 different departments, and went on site to check the progress of the server room. I wanted to use the grind to numb my brain, but as soon as the dead of night hit, that look in Anen's eyes would pop right back into my head, crystal clear. Later that night, I was working late in the office alone, double-checking the final tech spec. There was a soft knock at the door. I looked up and saw Su Qing walk in. She was still here, too. "You're still working?" "Almost done. Just this last file." She didn't say anything else. She just sat down in the chair across from me, pulled out her own laptop, and quietly went about her work. Neither of us said a word. The only sound in the office was the crisp clicking of our keyboards. And somehow, this silent company brought this strange, calming peace to my heart. An hour later, I finally finished everything. I shut my laptop. I let out a long sigh. "Let's go, I'll drive you home." "Okay." On the drive back, the car was still playing that same soothing instrumental music. While waiting for a red light at an intersection, I found myself speaking out of nowhere. "I saw my ex-wife and the kid yesterday." I was surprised by my own words the moment they left my mouth. I thought I was going to take that secret to my grave. Su Qing turned her head and looked at me quietly. No surprise, no pressing questions, just like the most patient listener. "She's not doing well," I continued. "The kid isn't doing well, either." When I saw the way she looked at me, I just couldn't go on. That complex mix of guilt, heartache, and utter helplessness, it made my throat tighten. The red light turned green, and I started the car, driving forward. "You feel sorry for the kid," she said softly. "I don't know. Logically, I know she isn't my daughter. Her tragedy isn't my fault. But emotionally, I just can't forget. I raised her for 5 years. Zhao Yi, you're not a saint, you're just a normal guy. Normal people have feelings, they get soft-hearted and they hurt. It's nothing to be ashamed of. I used to hate my dad, too. I felt like he destroyed our family, destroyed my mom's life. I swore I would never forgive him, until the year before last. He got seriously ill, that woman took all his money and ran away. He was left all alone in the hospital, looking so miserable. I went to see him. Seeing how old and frail he looked, I suddenly realized I didn't hate him that much anymore. I just felt sorry for him. There are some things we can never change. And some people we are destined to let down. All we can do is accept it. And keep moving forward. Her words were like a gentle medicine, slowly smoothing out the wrinkles in my heart. She was right, I couldn't change the past. And I shouldn't have to pay for someone else's mistakes. All I could do was to stay true to myself and focus on the road ahead. The car pulled up outside her apartment building. This time, she didn't unbuckle her seatbelt right away. The car was quiet for a long time. Zhao Yi, if you really can't let go of that child, maybe you can do something about it. She gave me a soft smile. Good night. Watching her silhouette disappear upstairs, I sat in the car, not starting the engine for a long time. Su Qing's words. They opened a window for me. A window leading to freedom. Leading to peace with myself. Maybe I really could do something. Not for Zhou Rui, not for that messed up past. Just for the kid who called me dad for 5 years. So that she could see a glimmer of light in her dark life. I pulled out my phone and called my detective friend, Old Wang. Old Wang, I need a favor, I said as soon as the call went through. It was the dead of night and his voice sounded a bit groggy. But the moment he realized it was me, he perked right up. Yi, it's so late. Did something happen? Nothing's wrong, just need a favor, I said, leaning back in my office chair. Staring out at the dazzling city lights, my voice was calmer than it had ever been. I want to anonymously sponsor a child. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Old Wang is a smart guy. He instantly guessed who I was talking about. Are you sure about this? He asked, his tone dead serious. I'm sure. I looked down at my own hands. These hands had held that child countless times, but now, all I could do was help him from the shadows. I don't want his life to be completely ruined, just because of the mistakes adults made. I get what you mean, Old Wang mused. But you can't just hand them the cash directly. Zhou Rui and his whole family are greedy to the bone. If the money gets into their hands, not a single cent will be spent on that kid. They'll just use it to pay off their own debts. That's exactly what I was thinking, I replied. That's why I came to you. You've got connections. Help me figure out a foolproof way to do this. Old Wang thought it over for a long time on the other end. Well, there is a way, he finally said. We could set up a specialized education trust fund. We'll get a reliable law firm to manage it. This money will be completely separate from their family. It'll be overseen by the lawyers, and the sole beneficiary of the fund will be the kid, Zhao Anan. As for how the money is used, it'll be strictly restricted to his education, medical bills, and basic living expenses. This idea was exactly what I wanted. For things like tuition and tutoring, he continued, the law firm can pay the schools and institutions directly. Medical bills can be fully reimbursed based on hospital receipts. And living expenses can be handled monthly, disguised as a charitable subsidy from a concerned citizen. It can be delivered by community workers or his teachers, given out as actual goods. Like clothes, food, and school supplies, handed right to the kid. This way, we can absolutely guarantee that the money is actually being spent on him. Old Wang's plan was incredibly thorough. It completely wiped away all my concerns. That's a great plan, I said. The beneficiary's guardian, meaning Zhou Rui, will only have the right to know about it, but absolutely zero control over the money. And make him sign an agreement. If the kid is abused in any way, or if his basic needs aren't being met, the foundation will have the legal right to revoke his custody of the child. This was, admittedly, my own selfish motive. I'm giving them this money to make sure they take good care of him. If they can't even do that, I have no problem using the law to make them pay a much heavier price. No problem, we can write all of that into the trust agreement. Old Wang agreed without missing a beat. As for the donor's identity, we'll just use a fake name, like the Starlight Charity Foundation. I guarantee no one will ever trace it back to you. Perfect, let's do it. Get in touch with the lawyers for me. The sooner, the better. I'll wire you the startup funds first. 5 million. On the other end of the line, old Wong audibly gasped at the number. Yi, isn't this a bit too much? Raising a child doesn't cost nearly this much. It's not too much. I looked out the window. My eyes perfectly calm. I originally thought this money would be her dowry. Let's just say I'm giving it to her early. This is the only thing I can do for her in this lifetime. Hanging up the phone, I felt a massive weight lift off my chest. I can no longer love her as a father, but at least I can still use what I have to shelter her, so she won't be completely helpless when she faces the storms of the future. It was a kind of relief, and a form of closure. Making peace with myself, I picked up my phone, opened my chat with Su Qing, and sent her a quick message. Thank you, she replied almost immediately, also with just a short text, good night. Staring at those words, the corners of my mouth curled up into a smile. I knew that the frozen lake inside my heart was slowly melting away. Even the night outside the window seemed to soften. After settling everything with Anan, I felt completely relaxed. Handling things at work also became so much easier. Su Qing and I worked together flawlessly, and our relationship, just like our project, was moving steadily forward. On weekends, we would go hiking together, watch the clouds roll by from the peak, and talk about our plans for the future. She wanted to build products in artificial intelligence that could truly change the world. As for me, I wanted to turn the city I was managing into a safer, more convenient, and more welcoming home for everyone. On rainy afternoons, we would find a quiet cafe and just read our own books. Every now and then, we'd look up and share a smile, understanding the peace in each other's eyes without saying a single word. I realized that when I was with her, I never had to put on a mask. I didn't have to try hard to impress her, either. We were just two curious souls, drawn to each other, yet deeply respectful. When the first phase of our project wrapped up perfectly, we decided to celebrate and finally let loose a little. Su Qing suggested that both our teams head out to the suburbs for a team-building trip. I happily agreed. We chose a beautiful resort out in the mountains, surrounded by crystal-clear water. During the day, everyone played team-building games, and had a massive water fight, just laughing and messing around together. Even I, the usually strict and serious deputy director, was soaked to the bone by the engineers' water guns. But I wasn't mad at all. Instead, I laughed and joined right in on the fun. Su Qing stood a little ways off, watching my drenched, messy state, her eyes crinkling into a smile, shining like a crescent moon. That evening, we had a huge barbecue buffet. Everyone gathered around the roaring bonfire, drinking beers and singing at the top of their lungs. The vibe was just so warm and full of life. I sat by the fire, looking around at all those young, vibrant, smiling faces, and felt a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in a long time. It turns out, life isn't just about betrayal and scheming. There is still such pure, simple joy to be found. Su Qing walked over with 2 bottles of beer and sat down next to me. She handed me one and said, "You're really different today." Am I? Yeah, you've smiled more today than you have in the past 3 months combined. Her eyes looked incredibly bright in the glow of the firelight. It's because I think I've finally found a new way to live. We didn't say anything else, just sat there quietly, drinking our wine, watching the campfire in front of us, listening to the singing off in the distance. I'm not sure how much time passed before my phone rang. It was my mom. I stepped away to a quiet corner and answered it. Yeezy? I'm not interrupting anything, am I? No, Mom, what's up? I just wanted to let you know, there's been a bit of a situation over at Joe Rui's place. Auntie Lee told me that a while back, someone claiming to be a lawyer went to see Joe Rui's parents. They said some Starlight Foundation wanted to sponsor Anon. Not only did they get her into the best bilingual kindergarten in the city, but they even hired a dedicated therapist to give her counseling every week. I listened quietly. At first, her parents thought it was a scam, trying to con them out of their money. But then they realized these people didn't want a single dime, and were even covering all the costs. They were absolutely thrilled. Now, their attitude towards Anon has done a complete 180-degree turn. They treat her like absolute royalty every single day. Terrified their little cash cow might run away. And little Anon is so much happier now, too. Her teachers say she's made new friends at kindergarten, and even volunteered to perform on stage. My mom let out a long sigh on the other end of the line. I don't know what kind soul is behind all this good work, but at least the kid is doing well. It really puts my mind at ease. That's good to hear. My voice was perfectly calm. I hung up the phone. I looked up at the stars in the sky. They were so bright, so dense. Just like Anand's eyes, I felt the very last bit of darkness that had been weighing on my heart finally fade away. I turned around and walked back to the campfire. Su Qing was still waiting for me. Family stuff? Is it all sorted out? Yeah, it's all taken care of. I looked into her eyes. It was like they held their own brilliant, starry sky. A sudden urge washed over me. I just wanted to pull her into my arms, but I held myself back. Some things just need the right moment. And I knew that moment wasn't too far off. After over a year of grueling hard work, the Smart City project finally had its glorious, full-scale launch. The city government even hosted a massive press conference to celebrate. As the lead director of the project, I stood right there in the spotlight, presenting our work to media and guests from all over the country, sharing the results of what countless people had poured their hearts into. I could see the pride in Director Zhang's eyes in the audience, the glowing smiles of my colleagues, and there, sitting right in the front row, was Su Qing. She was looking at me so intently. Her eyes were filled with admiration, with pride, and with a deep, profound affection that only I could understand. The press conference was an absolute triumph. Later that night at the celebration banquet, the mayor himself showed up and gave me the highest of praises. He even publicly promised that an even more crucial urban development project would be put under my command. I became the center of attention. Applause, praise, and congratulations washed over me like a tidal wave. I smiled and responded to every single one of them, but inside, I felt incredibly calm. I deserved all of this. After surviving that absolute hell of a betrayal, I had built this empire with my own 2 hands, step by step. Once the banquet wrapped up, I politely turned down all the after parties. Su Qing and I walked out of the hotel. The evening breeze felt a bit cool, clearing the slight buzz from the alcohol. We didn't take a car, but walked side by side along the tree-lined avenue outside. Congratulations, Director Zhao. No, actually, I should be calling you our biggest hero. And congratulations to you too, Su Qing. Without you and your team, this project wouldn't be where it is today. The final payment for our partnership will hit the account tomorrow. Plus, I'll personally be doubling the bonuses for everyone on your team. Director Zhao is feeling generous. We strolled and chatted along the way, the mood light and easy. But, just as we were about to reach the parking lot, a frail figure suddenly dashed out from the shadows by the road, blocking our path. It was Zhou Rui. She was wearing baggy, worn-out clothes, her face sickly pale, her eyes locked dead onto me. It was a look full of despair and reckless madness. Su Qing instinctively stepped a little closer to me, her eyes on high alert. I gently patted her hand, signaling her to relax. Then, I turned to Zhou Rui. What is it? My voice was as cold as December ice. Zhao Yi. Zhou Rui's voice was terribly hoarse. She shot a glance at Su Qing beside me, a flash of bitter jealousy in her eyes. But she quickly turned back to me, begging, lend me some money. No, please, just give me some money. The reason is, Anan is sick. She's really sick. The doctors say she needs surgery. It's gonna cost a lot of money. My family is completely broke. That little bit of money you gave me, my parents took it all to pay off my brother's gambling debts. Zhao Yi, I'm begging you, for the sake of the marriage we used to have, for the sake of Anan calling you dad for 5 years, please, save her. She didn't do anything wrong. She sobbed, about to drop to her knees. I watched her pathetic little act, feeling absolutely nothing. The supervising lawyer from the Starlight Foundation sends me a weekly report on Anan. I knew the kid was perfectly healthy and happy. Every single word out of Zhou Rui's mouth was a lie. She probably saw me on the news, saw how successful I am now. Saw an incredible woman like Su Qing by my side. She was bitter. She was jealous. She was using the kid as her last bargaining chip, trying to squeeze a little more out of me. Or maybe she just wanted to ruin things for me and my new life. If this were the old me, I would have been absolutely furious. I would have ruthlessly exposed her lies and humiliated her. But right now, looking at this woman, whose soul had been completely twisted by greed and envy, I just felt pity. Zhou Rui, I've told you before, we are done. We have nothing to do with each other anymore. And as for Anan's medical bills, I took care of that a long time ago. Lawyer Wong from the Starlight Foundation should have sent you the medical coverage agreement by now. Anan is covered by a top-tier, lifelong medical insurance policy. No matter the illness, the foundation will cover every single penny. All you have to do is take her to the designated hospital. You don't even need to sign anything. I stared into her wide, shell-shocked eyes, and added, emphasizing every single word, you coming to me today, was just you using the kid as a cheap excuse to squeeze me for cash. Well, let me tell you, it's not gonna happen. From the very moment you framed me, you should have known that for the rest of your life, you can forget about getting another single cent from me. If you truly want what's best for the child, then make good use of the resources the foundation gives you to raise him. If you ever dare to use the child as a bargaining chip again, or get any twisted ideas, I have plenty of ways to strip you of your custody. My words felt like cold daggers, completely shattering her last shred of hope. She slumped to the floor, her face pale as a ghost, unable to utter a single word. I didn't even glance at her again. I turned around, and naturally took Su Qing's hand. Her hand was so warm, and she squeezed mine back, giving me a reassuring smile. Let's go home. Okay. Hand in hand, we walked beneath the city's dazzling lights, heading towards our car and towards our shared, brand new future.